education sector becoming the latest fancy of kidnappers who appear to be roving free across Nigeria and less number of people traveling by road, questions are being posed as to what next should Nigerians expect as the days go by. Is Nigeria sliding into anarchy, despite the government's brave face and countless assurances? Are there practicable ways and means of arresting this dangerous situation? Should the government seek foreign military personnel assistance instead of just military hardware? Joining us now to try to provide answers to this and more is Ladi Thompson, a clergyman and security consultant. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Pleasure is always mine.
Well, Reverend Thompson, it's good to see you again.
Oh my God, it's been a few decades.
Yeah, I'm sure. The last time we discussed, it was a similar situation, politics, sure, and all of that. Let me ask you. Earlier on before you joined us, I was saying we've now reached a point in Nigeria where the president is quoted as appealing to bandits and appealing to the people. And I was saying, no, the president of Nigeria should not be a motivational speaker. He should just do what he needs to do. But I guess all of us are involved in this matter. What do you think is really wrong with the security situation? And what do you think government should do to save Nigeria?
Well, your question is something that centers on an existential issue. It's existential, so it deserves gravitas in the considerations that we must give. Now, first of all, I have always said something that no medical doctor can ever prescribe a right cure for a sickness or ailment until a proper diagnosis has been done. I believe the biggest challenge we have in Nigeria today is the simple fact that we are yet to put our finger to diagnose properly what the national challenge is. And I keep saying that the moment we do that, I don't think there will be any more confusion. We will be able to handle this issue decisively as long as we do this within the time frame that allows us to handle it. Let me go further by saying that I can speak authoritatively on this because my constituency in terms of the Christian church was the first line of victims when this thing began to operate in Nigeria. What Nigeria is dealing with, I'm going to say this again, is a supremacist agenda that is global in its reach. The template that is at work in Nigeria is a template that was designed to be difficult for you to even know what it is. You are dealing with a hydra. You are dealing with a hydra that has a head in practically all institutions of our nation. It has had a few decades to infiltrate Nigeria. You're dealing with something that's extremely intelligent, and when I say intelligent, I'm talking about the best minds in the world. You're dealing with something that has a displacement sequence but uses terror. What you're looking at in Nigeria is the clinical use of terror to subjugate and to break the will of the nation. Now, the interesting thing about this it's a new war form, actually. The interesting thing about this new war form is that it has recognizable patterns, it is predictable, it can be tracked, and of course, it can be neutralized. Now, don't forget that one of the aspects of this war is the fact that it wages what they call asymmetrical warfare and uses what we call hybrid threats. Now, that alone on its own can puzzle the military of any nation. And so you'll find out that any nation that intends to handle this thing properly must first of all make a difference between its national army, the military, and national security. You're going to find out that even that little fine detail alone will enhance, the effectiveness of a nation that wants to effectively check this new war form. Now, make no mistakes, you are dealing with a war form. It's a new kind of war. It is a total war form. It is devoid of any rules of engagement. And this is the reason why you find out that if you try to checkmate it with your military, your traditional military command structure, you are automatically at a disadvantage, because you are dealing with an army that really has no uniform, has no fixed location, has no barracks, has nothing. All the ensigns and all the conventions of war that used to be a standard and consistent all over the world, none of those things exist with this kind of war. So you can understand why we tell people that even if your military is going to answer to these threats, first of all, national security should be ahead of the military, of the army. And I say this with all responsibility because when the army wants to checkmate this, it has to deconstruct its chain of command. And in deconstructing it, it has to rearrange it in such a way that there's some degree of fluidity so that a lot of decisions can be made quickly and effectively in this new war form. Now, don't forget that this is a new war form that doesn't mind using a school, doesn't mind using a hospital, does not mind using even women as weapons of war. It's prepared to use children as weapons of war. It is totally ruthless. It is unrelenting. You can't plead with it. You cannot negotiate with it. You will think you can, but it only uses your negotiation to advance its own agenda against you. So let me just say this, that the big challenge we have is that the architecture of thought that we have in Nigeria has not yet matched the architecture of thought of the war terror template that is working in Nigeria. It has studied us, it knows our fault lines, it understands our traditional crevices, and it is exploiting everything exploitable towards its final objective.
Which is what, pray tell? I mean, I'm even scared to ask. You referred earlier to a supremacist agenda. That's the most intractable ideology of all. So what is the final agenda? And also you made reference to a fluid chain of command. With the military, I mean, I'm no expert, you are. We tend to think in terms of the rigidity of the chain of command. So I'd like you to expand on that as well.
Well, I didn't quite get the second question, so maybe we should clarify that quickly.
You made a reference to a fluid chain of command.
Yes.
In the military. Can you expand on that? Because we tend to think of it as a rigid chain of command.
I've got you. Now, first of all, when you say what is the objective of this thing, the objective is very simple. It is global. It is not national. It is not even regional. Some people have been intelligent enough to have a plan to rule the entire world. Now, it has an ideology which is to subjugate everybody. It wears a cloak, a disguise of religion. And it wears the disguise of religion to become more effective so that it has practically a standing army, or it has a catchment group from which it can fill the ranks of its own militant arm. So the bottom line is this, is that it will use, in this case, an Islamic cover, which is why some professionals across the world have tried their best to sort of introduce the new word Islamist to separate it from Islam as a strategy to help people to understand what they're dealing with. Now, for the army, when we say the army has to deconstruct and it has to be very fluid, now, let's take, for example, the issue of the Air Force. And let me quickly put in here that interagency cooperation has to be increased to a degree that has never, ever been before, and using modern communication equipment. Now, when you deal with an unorthodox army that has no rules, if it decides to use 7 women, maybe 1 pregnant, and straps suicide bombs, vests on them to infiltrate maybe a target. Now, how does your army respond to this kind of thing? Because if you're trusting in the regular chain of command, you're going to be looking up and asking for instructions. What do we do in this situation? And so on and so forth. And you're going to find out that except you have permitted the decisions to be taken in a more fluid way, that a captain, for instance, in the field is allowed to make certain decisions knowing that he's going to be accountable for them. You'll find out that the opportunity for the army to check the advance, check this unorthodox form of warfare, check maybe a motley crew of people who are coming on motorcycles, who have rocket-propelled grenades mounted even on the motorcycles. If you're looking at the standard chain of command waiting for instructions, do you know how many times we've had complaints from our young boys in the war front because we have to pray for them? Who point out that sometimes there's an objective, they've located the enemy, and then the instruction has to come before they can get the news across to the Air Force, and the instruction must now come from the head of the Air Force before the bombing takes place. Now, the chain of command means that sometimes these kind of decisions will take hours. Now, by the time often when the instruction is now given for the Air Force to strafe that location, you may find out that the Army, trying to make sure that this enemy does not escape, has observed that they are actually, off. They go in pursuit, and by the time the Air Force comes, it ends up bombing the Nigerian Army because the enemy has since evacuated. And it's also pertinent for me to say to you, when I say that this thing is extremely intelligent, it's extremely clever, it often collapses nation from within by infiltrating, like I said to you, all institutions, which means that it has moles, spies, in high places. And as long as those ones are there, you'll find out that even if a report is coming in and saying that this is a particular location where the enemy has gathered, if it has spies in that particular arm of our defense, you'll find out that the information gets quickly to the militants, and these terrorists are quickly able to evacuate their own troops. So you see, we are dealing with something that requires a 360-degree approach if we intend to make it.
Okay, great insight. Quite doom stuff, I should say. Pretty much it's like a fight for Jerusalem after King Baldwin's death. That's what this kind of stuff looks like to me. But you talked about thinking, and that part really caught me. How do we form a thinking army? The Second World War was not won because you had very good guns and machinery and all of that. But it was because of the likes of the thinking army Britain had, people like Alan Turing that could crack the German codes. How can we develop that thinking army to start cracking all the codes on the lines of ideology or the lines of technology, the lines of thinking one or two steps ahead of this very grand force, this Frankenstein that wants to take over the world, be it of ideology, be it of personal greed or whatever it means, be it of this sort of like this Hitler mentality and thinking that you've been able to put forward. But you're going to answer that when we come back from this quick commercial break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We've got Ladi Thompson, a clergyman and security consultant. Welcome to the program. So I was asking that do we have a thinking force, to fight back? Because obviously it's not boots on the ground kind of fight. A lot of thought has to go into it. I cited Alan Turing, making very great impact in the Second World War. And I cited the fact that, I talked about Alan Turing's impact as regards cracking the codes and how we can have sort of like a thinking force, to counter this. Are we even there yet as regards this? Do we have have we even set up a team to think about this insurgency we've been fighting since it started a couple of years back?
Well, first of all, we're going to have to disabuse our national mind, the mind of Nigeria, that this will ever be resolved just by the Nigerian army. First of all, I want to say to you that a lot of the textbooks that are being used by the military across the world to fight this in diverse nations, the prints on those textbooks are still very fresh. They are just being written. You're dealing with something that has never been before. and you find out that there's a consensus that the maximum impact that your kinetics, that your military, that your guns can do in solving this problem is about 37 to 38%. Now, in any country that intends to win this war convincingly, there are 4 things that the country must put into place quickly. I said to you, this war form, the template, is designed in such a way that it is difficult to recognize. And if you cast your mind back the past 15, 20, 25, 30 years in Nigeria, you'll find out that initially people thought, could it be political? Some will say, no, it's religious. Some will say, no, it's ethnic. And then people will come up again and say, no, it's a financial issue, it's the poverty, and all that and all that. Now, the template on which it was designed exploits all these things. So it is none of all this, and yet it is all of that. So if you plan to defeat it, there are 4 things you must put into place. Number 1, you must readjust your military strategy. And I say that I think the challenge I have in Nigeria right now is that the army cannot be leading the security. I think it is more pertinent that security takes the front seat, in this war concerning the field. Now, even if you're able to deconstruct your army and its response time, you put in your interagency cooperation on time and all that, you're still going to find out that there's a lot more to this war that you have to reckon with. So, you're going to need to look for a national ideology, a Nigerian ideology. Because you see, it's a war for not only the heads of men, but for the hearts of men. And as long as the country doesn't have a national ideology that works for the country, let me quickly explain what I mean. Those who are studying Nigeria know that the enculturation program that produces a Nigerian is weaker than the program that produces an Igbo man, a Yoruba man, a Hausa man, or whatever. So you find out that the kind of cohesion needed to put all arms on deck, this enemy knows it and exploits our differences. So somebody's going to have to think up quickly a new national program for Nigeria. A new national program that gives you an identity that has more advantages than any of the enculturation programs. So first of all, you have to be more a Nigerian than you can be than your cultural identity. As long as those gaps exist, this war form is going to continue to exploit it. Now, apart from a superior ideology, you're going to have to also have a superior value system. You see, this war form uses terror. What terror does is that it has to break your will. Let's, for instance, look at the issue of soft targets. 18 months before they began to kidnap children, school children, go after women and all that, it was obvious that that phase was coming in. Now they're going after soft targets, and Nigeria needs to ask itself a question. If somebody says he has a war against Nigeria, why is he kidnapping students? Now, Nigeria has to understand that the value system of the country must be in such a way that the value of the life of the average citizen has to be heightened. The value given accorded to human worth in Nigeria right now across the entire nation has been low because the worst form of corruption is actually the devaluation of human worth. And that's why you find out that everything from human slavery to colonialism and then to this new war form, all these things actually devalue human worth greatly. So somehow we're going to have to rejig and re-engineer the nation. And this is where, again, the media comes in, because you see, media is a force multiplier. And you're going to find out that even the way we report, I was watching, for instance, the way the media was covering the reports of the kidnapped children. When I looked at the questions, I looked at the angles, and I looked at all that, I said to myself, some media has been infiltrated. There is some influence in media that is steering the conversation and away from the directions it should be going.
Well, Reverend Thompson.
Now, sorry.
Okay, we have just about 3 minutes to go. But before then, I just wanted to ask you a very direct question.
Yeah.
If we were to get an opportunity
Yes.
to meet with the president of Nigeria today as a security consultant.
Yes.
What are those specific things you advise him to do? Very specific.
Okay, that's good. Number one, I'm just going to let him know that if we're going to win this war, we're going to need all of Nigeria. We're going to have to mobilize the entire nation. If we're going to win this war, we're going to need a bipartisan effort. We're going to have to cross all bridges, all divides. If we're going to win this war, we have to put in those 4 things I said: a superior value system, a superior ideology, we have a change of military tactics, and above all, architecture of thought. We're going to have to put together a multidisciplinary think tank that's going to work with all this put together. Now, let me even try and put it in a very simple way. I think the best way I can put this is that I remember that looking back, Obafemi Awolowo, I think it was in 1968, made a comment. And I think this is just what the president needs to go back and look at. And this comment will help us to know how we can move forward. He said that the joys and the triumphs of Nigeria are contaminants. I mean, it's one. And he said, so also are our adversities and our problems. So if you touch somebody in Sokoto, it's as bad as touching somebody in Lagos. That's only the way we can effect this war. And then he went on to say that Nigeria has to do something quickly. Nigeria has to look at the fact that there are forces of disintegration. Quickly work on those forces of disintegration and unite the country. Since 68 till date, very little has been done in that direction. And then the second thing, he used the word recrudescence, talked about internecine hostilities within. And he said we have to find a way of halting these internecine hostilities. Now, if we take that advice, and let me add one more quote he made, which I think captures everything neatly. In 1952, 16th of July, Obafemi Awolowo said something. He said, we need to aim to construct a totally new edifice, more noble in concept, a new Nigeria with a greater concept than what we inherited and what we are patching up. Not only more noble in concept, it also has to be more artistic in design, which is take note of all the different cultural nations and let them bring their best to the fore. And finally, it must be more imposing in structure and expanse than anything anybody has ever seen or dreamt. In short, there's a systemic failure in Nigeria. Wow. Another election is not going to win this war.
Well,
so somebody needs to think.
We'd like to thank you, Reverend Thompson. I would have loved to ask you about Macedonia Initiative, but maybe that will be another day. Thank you very much.